Hello, everybody. It's another episode of AI Got This. And today we have returning with us Gina and Michael, but maybe you guys can introduce yourselves really quick and then we'll jump in.
Sure. Thanks, Carmel. I'm Gina Montgomery. I'm a director in the AI team.
Michael Pacifico, also part of the AI team, focusing on solutions and bringing things to life.
Yeah, awesome. Great segue, Michael. Let's jump into bringing things to life. We've been talking about AI. I think this is our third season of AI Got This, and we've had a lot of examples and proof of concept discussions and things like that. I think now this year we're really trying to help people think about how they really operate, taking things out of experimental mode and move into operational mode. And I think that should probably be our theme for the year. I know it is internally for us, but want to sort of share some things with you all today about how we're seeing folks operationalize AI and really provide the value that that everybody sort of anticipated. And I don't think that's easy. And I think we can all give a couple of examples. I do want to give one really quick. We met with a school in Denver uh, uh, almost a year and a half ago now and did a workshop with them and helped them sort of kick off their ideation on how they were going to operationalize it. I met with them this morning. They have now saved 2,900 hours of time that they were doing manual tasks before that now they've got AI helping with. And so they've finished 41 AI projects and they're saving 2,900 hours. That's incredible. Like when you think about that, right? And so how are people doing this? And so maybe let's just dive in and if you guys have examples or you want to talk about a little bit about, how we're seeing people move from experimentation to really embracing AI in the way that we've always sort of anticipated, right? It's a it's a wholly different way to think about work, but now I'm thinking about work that way, and now I'm going to put it into my daily use, and I don't just mean responding to emails, right?
Definitely. I can talk about it a little bit higher level, and then maybe Michael, you want to hop in with an example. But just, when we think back to last year, Carmel, to your point, we were doing a lot of use case development with organizations, right? They were in that experimentation mode. Everybody had good ideas as to where they thought AI could apply. And where we're really starting to see that shift now is we're looking at, how organizations are putting AI first. So instead of coming back on top and kind of slapping AI on top of different workflows, really trying to understand how to quantify value and score that for those use case ideas that they had, bringing those into more of an operationalized model. So that could include things like accountability within the AI solution. Can it be context aware? Is its actions traceable? Where does the human in the loop fit? And then how do we make sure that the folks that are interacting with it have some sort of feeling about it, right? Is it helping them? Is it not helping them? Is it hurting the reputation? Is it helping the reputation? We look at it from that layer. And then also, how do we govern those solutions that come into play? So instead of having all these sporadic experiments sitting around in different business departments, it's like, how do we pull all that into a governed situation? And then also, how do we manage innovation going forward? So that school example you gave is a great example of innovation management, right? There's, so many use cases, and now we're able to measure how many hours are being saved. And I think that's the big shift, is trying to figure out how to operationalize that in a framework type of methodology. And we are seeing some builds and those things coming to life in other areas than your school example. Maybe Michael, you want to talk about one?
Yeah, I think there's, almost a spectrum of operations too. So it goes from personal productivity operationalization, right? So we've been writing a prompt, write this email for me, help me find this document, email, etc. But taking that even to the next level, you can, and I enabled some things even myself, scheduling prompts to run. So when I come in, I see what emails I didn't respond to yesterday. I'm not digging through, I'm not writing kind of these transactional things. It's part of my day. from there it can kind of scale up to more role-based. So from someone in sales, as an example, being able to produce research about their customers, news, trends, events of the customer, their industry, et cetera, and give them insights and recommendations that they would have to go think about to do. They don't have to do that anymore. It's just summarizing that and bringing that back. So, it can happen at any level, but it's using the tools to kind of put some things together to make things better, save time for sure, and just streamline how people are working and spending their day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
have.
think it's
Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Gina.
I was just going to say, I have one example. We were working with a legal firm last week and talking about some of their painful processes or frictional processes that exist in the business. And a very common use case that's come up, in those use case workshops with the legal firms is around conflict checks. Michael and I had a chance to demonstrate like a multi-agent orchestration solution around that. When you start to dig into the use cases themselves, it's around where AI can apply. And in this case, it was like the intake form or the way that the paralegals were intaking matters was all over the place, right? Like they had different
Yeah.
formats, they were collecting different amounts of information, and then they would have to run that through either a very long manual process where it could be hundreds of hours over weeks to really determine if it was a conflict or not. And in some cases, they have very large implemented systems for that, which also takes a lot of time and expertise just to work through that process. So Michael and I had spun up a multi-agent solution for a legal firm where the intake matter is structured and now standardized, and that feeds the other agent to do a pre-screen. So if it can look at just the database, and come back with a green, yellow, or red flag, we're able to see, hey, do I need to spend all that time doing that extra work in the conflict system, or is this just an obvious conflict? So we're seeing some of those things too, like how do you operationalize around those key areas?
Yeah, I think those are great examples, right? When we think about and the thing I like about that example also is that it's not generative based, right? It's more agent based. And I think that's where people are trying to get to an agent base, but I think they're still a little bit stuck in that generative side. Like, how do I get to that, right? Like, I don't know how to build that. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. And so I think one of the things that we're also seeing is that um, moving people along that cycle, right? That the journey of AI into more agents doing work for you uh, is something that we're starting to see more and more of. And do you think that most of our customers or most of the population is going to be able to get there by themselves, or do you think they need help?
I think they need help. I generally speaking, we have that adoption bell curve, right, for anything new. And the right side of that is your late majority and your laggards. And those folks are not really ready yet to accept an agent doing part of their role, right? Without some coaching, some trust building, it's a change and a shift in organizational leadership, right? So you're used to motivating people to do jobs, right? With rewards. Hey, you did a great job. I'm going to give you some kudos and, some company points for that. Machines don't need that kind of motivation, right? They're just going to follow their rules and do their job. But we as humans now have to manage those too. So it's like, how do we do that? Another instance I can share, Michael and I worked on last week as well was something called an agent, a skill boss coach, right? So how do we teach that trust between machine and human? Michael built an agent around that, and how to skill up the human on that part so they can ask, what's the intention of this agent? What can it do? What can't it do? How do I interact with it? How do I start? Those types of things. And I don't know if Michael wants to chime in on that, but that's one of the things that we're seeing in helping people get used to agents is by having an agent help them do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's still, a little bit of fear about agents and agents taking over and, people not being able to continue working in their roles, right? And I suppose like it's a valid thought. There could be some scenarios where, maybe that may be true. But, with the shift, with the mindset, and with the way you can think about building these solutions, it really becomes, working for you, not competing, not taking your job or your role away, but scaling your role so that it's doing things for you that now you don't even have to think through, take the time to do. You can spend more time doing other things. Perfect example is, we all do lots of traveling. Um, not at your most comfortable space for working. It's hard to get things done when you're traveling, right? And we're all busy. Everyone's busy. Um, Starting to build and see agents come to life that can start to help create sales proposals or create SOWs or create material that we would spend the time doing. Um, they can do it quickly. They can do it at scale, right? 100 proposals by an agent is very different than 100 proposals by me. I'm still coordinating and managing all that stuff. It's not just this blind throw it over the wall. But now, like I'm traveling, if I'm, presenting at a conference, if I'm meeting with the client, whichever, like I can still get work done quickly, and not have to get really too far behind. That's the goal anyway. It's like this is working for me, not against me.
I love that. So you built yourself an agent to write SOWs because guess what, buddy? We're going to do more of those then.
In
in the works.
progress, but yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, and I think what we're seeing too is I also talked to another organization today that was talking about they opened a second facility and didn't have to hire all the administrative people that they would have normally had to hire because they were using AI in a way that allowed them to scale in a different way. So it wasn't reducing headcount, it was making it so they didn't have to add as much headcount and they could still grow, right? And I think those are the conversations that are super interesting to me. And I know that, even our own internal development team is doing the same thing right now, right? Like we are using agents and AI to help us write code and build applications and solutions. So much so that, you know, probably we should have hired 3 people, but we don't have to right now because we've got AI doing enough of that work that it is allowing folks to, take on the higher level work and let the agents and the AI do, you know, the hands-on keyboard type of work.
Yeah.
So okay. So
Yeah. And
when
there's even
people,
with that, that's actually a good phrase, hands on keyboard. With, there's newer capabilities that have been released in preview, et cetera, that actually mimic that hands on keyboard. So it's not even a, you know, generative AI type solution where you may be synthesizing data and analyzing reasoning. You are literally following a set of instructions, very much like RPA, but in a agentic capacity where you can, be in Teams or something and you're just chatting, right, with an agent that's then in the background going out and opening up your ERP system, going to a month end process, manually typing in information at your behalf, at your request, but you're not actually task switching to what you have to do. You can just say, start depreciation process and off it goes while you continue to work. Those are the things too that are going to become very powerful.
yeah, I love that example. And I think, we've seen examples like that used in on the generative side for a while now, right? Like as an example, we're in this meeting. I'm having it write some stuff for me right now, right? So do some market research for me that I'm trying to get finished before the end of the day. And I have too many back-to-back meetings to be able to spend all day doing that, but I can have it do that. But having it do actual tasks like that while you're doing something else, I think is super interesting. I had one person tell me the other day that they had three so from a context switching perspective, they were like, this might be a bit much, but I've got 3 different projects happening at the exact same time where I'm having AI do each one of those separately. And then when one finishes, I go back to the other one. And they were like, well, I'm a little bit exhausted today, but I think I'm going to get it all done. So super interesting to see how people are doing that. I think the agent, I think as we start seeing more and more people adopt agents is when we're going to see more and more of the experimentation turn into operationalizing AI because it now becomes something that is happening on a regular basis that I don't have to initiate, but I'm probably approving in that human in the loop line, right?
Exactly.
And so it's taking a task off of my plate and I just get to review it and look at it. I like the legal example that you guys have. I think we probably could come up with 15 other examples if we wanted to. Um, Anything else in terms of how we think about people operationalizing uh, their AI journey at this point?
I mean, for me, the most popular topic is around getting your people comfortable with it, right? And like I said, it's a shift of both organizational leadership, learning how to manage both humans and machines together to get jobs done. But it's also important in how the solutions are being built. So when you think about how the experiments might have gone, in the year before, or even the year before that, there was really no standardization that we're seeing across orgs. Different business units were spinning up different technologies and trying different things. Having that sort of standardized in a path forward makes it easier to operationalize, meaning like whatever I'm rolling out, does it hit these checks? Do I know where the human in the loop needs to be involved? Is it defined? And do the humans know that? Like, so they have some sort of understanding how to operate alongside those machines, and kind of squashing down the fear and some of the hesitation that's going on from that aspect. So that AI literacy and people upskilling components still remain really important as we operationalize. And then obviously there's some things on the governance side that everyone needs to be thinking about, because once you have agent sprawl happening, right? I mean, it's not like you're going to have one AI thing and that's it, right? We're going to have a bazillion of them across the org, like your school example. How do we make sure that, authentication is set up correctly? Like, are we leveraging the way we want to authenticate against those solutions? Is it manageable? Are there security risks? How many people are using each AI agent or solution that we've rolled out? How do they feel about it? Are we surveying the users on their satisfaction with it? Do they wish it had more features? Do they hate it and no one's using it? Should we retire it? Like, how do we think about innovation management over time? Those are all key areas that I think as we start to operationalize, we have to think about.
Yeah, great point. You want to add anything to that, Michael?
Yeah, just like, the literacy is still huge because capabilities are changing drastically, week to week, it seems. So just being aware of capabilities is super important. And I think the governance part, especially around cost, is something that will be growing more and more. And just like Gina said, knowing what's been deployed, what's being used, how is it being used? There's always ways to make things more efficient as well. So it's just monitoring all that as well to make sure that, yep, we can operationalize, anything, typically, right? And we can write code, we can do something, but is it right? Is it the right way to do it? Are there better ways? And all that governance kind of, especially in AI and cost of tokens and credits, et cetera, could something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're actually actively working on some things that help folks with that, right? In terms of
Yep.
monitoring your Azure consumption and how you're doing that. So if anybody wants to talk about that, they can reach out to us. But those are real tangible things. And I think Microsoft has also come out with some tools to help manage agents if you're in that ecosystem. I don't know that Google's come out with the same tool yet, although I think it's coming soon to a Gemini factory near you. And so because we do have to think about, we don't want to squash the innovation coming up, but we do want to manage it so that we don't have everybody knows I love my access database analogy, right? So we don't want that kind of a sprawl where we've got rogue agents out there, people creating multiple agents that are doing the exact same thing. So I think that's super important as we think about how we operationalize. And I think, right, so there's one thing to say we're operationalizing it, meaning we're going to start using it. It's something else to say we're going to manage it, right? And so I think those are great points that that folks need to take into consideration. It's not just about utilizing the technology. It's also about how are we supporting it? How are we managing it? What data? Where does it have access, to your point? And so I think those were all really good points that y'all brought up. All right. Any closing remarks here on on people's AI journey and how they sort of move to the next level?
I think the only thing I'd add that we haven't really touched on is just around, with US policy, right? And so we're starting to see interest happening in the ISO certification path for 42001, which is currently the only US-based policy around certifying, your AI system, right? So we are starting to see that kind of be that next layer, and I think that that's an area where if you've got regulations or compliances that you have to maintain, that becomes important. That's something Armanino is also helping with, within our audit department. So more to come on that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Michael, anything else you want to add?
I would say, don't be afraid to move forward. I think a lot of the especially smaller and smaller mid-sized companies may have not even started doing things because it's so confusing. There's a lot of fear, but they're going to quickly realize that from a business perspective, like their competitors are, they're operationalizing it, they're saving costs, they're getting more efficient, and they're generating revenue. It's going to become like a driver very quickly if you don't do that. So
Yeah,
don't be afraid, start thinking, and we can help.
I love that. Okay, our theme for the day. Don't be afraid. All right, awesome. Well, thank you both. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next month on AI Got This.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.